It's less than a week until the first 2 episodes of Doctor Who Season 1 air, but what do we actually think is going to happen this season? Okay, so at the time of recording this episode of the podcast, it's just over a week until Doctor Who Season 1 airs with the Space Babies, or Space Babies even, and the Devil's Chord. And at the time this video is going out, and by the time you're watching this, it'll be less than a week until that happens. So I wanted to kind of use this last time before the episodes start airing, because this will be the last thing I release before then, to kind of go over some final predictions for Doctor Who Season 1. Some of them my own, just going episode by episode, but I've also got a few comments from you guys with some of your theories as to what we think is going to happen this season. Okay, so I'm going to start by going episode by episode and talking about some of my theories and some of your theories about each episode of Doctor Who Season 1, starting obviously with Space Babies. So we know Space Babies is obviously the first episode. It seems to be taking off immediately after the Church on Ruby Road. From what we can see, the first scene probably is going to continue from that moment where Ruby first enters the TARDIS, because there seems to be some new bits of that in the trailer indicating that this is immediately taking off from where we left off. And it seems like it's going to start with Ruby basically, or the Doctor even, asking Ruby where she wants to go for the first time, to which it seems like she's going to say she wants to go and see the dinosaurs, which we obviously had quite a look at the dinosaurs in the trailer, but we've also seen a full kind of clip of, not like the whole scene of that, but the start of that scene on, it was I think on like Good Morning America or something like that, one of the American interviews that they were doing, where we basically got to see pretty much a full scene of Space Babies, the intro of Space Babies. And obviously at some point during this moment there's going to be that butterfly effect gag, which I don't really know how that's going to go down, because it seems very unrelated to the episode as a whole. It just kind of seems to be during that first trip that he takes Ruby on for like a little bit of the episode. So I don't know how that's going to actually be resolved, or if it's just like Ruby or the Doctor imagining in their head how that could happen if she did actually do it and it doesn't actually happen. I'm not sure. But then I assume what's going to happen is the Doctor's going to put it on random landing, because we hear him say that in one of the trailers, I think, and that takes us to this space station where we have the Space Babies that we've seen in the trailer, talking babies, and also there's the bogeyman in there. Now we do actually have a synopsis for this episode, so I'm going to read that out now. So the synopsis for Space Babies is: Ruby learns the Doctor's amazing secrets when he takes her to the far future. There they find a baby farm run by babies, but can they be saved from the terrifying bogeyman? So this doesn't really give us too much more details than what I've already said. Obviously we know there's a space station with Space Babies, which is this kind of baby farm, and we know there's going to be the bogeyman. So there's not really a whole lot else to say about this. I don't know how it's going to really all fit in. It's probably just going to be a kind of standard opening episode with not too much crazy stuff, just a nice little bit of banter between Doctor and Ruby and stuff like that. But I don't know why the bogeyman is on the space station. That's the bit that seems a little bit disconnected from the rest of the story to me. We do know there's the character Jocelyn, played by Golda Rochevelle, who seems to be checking the cameras and stuff like that, which is interesting because the rest of the space station seems to be sort of run by the Space Babies, so I don't really know what that's all about. I know I've seen speculation that maybe the bogeyman is literally made of babies' bogies or whatever, which could be an interesting take. It does look quite like a bit of a wacky, kind of quirky episode. Seems like it's maybe going to be kind of comedic, but also quite scary at the same time, because obviously the bogeyman does look quite terrifying and quite Demogorgon-like, very much like a horror type monster than a funny monster, but maybe that's meant to like try and make us believe that it's a scary monster when it's actually quite silly or something. I'm not sure. So I think that's probably all I have to say about Space Babies for now. But on the same day, May 11th or 10th, depending on where in the world you are, we also get the Devil's Chord, which is probably the one we've seen the most about. It's the one we've had kind of the most in promotion and stuff like that, which is obviously the 60s episode where they go back in time to see the Beatles, and there's also Jinx Monsoon's Maestro in there. So like with Space Babies, we do also have a synopsis for the Devil's Chord as well. They're the only 2 episodes we have the synopsis for, and the synopsis for the Devil's Chord is: the Doctor and Ruby meet the Beatles, but discover that the all-powerful Maestro is changing history. London becomes a battleground with the future of humanity at stake. So this to me seems to suggest that I might be right with a previous theory that I've had, where that moment where they go back kind of to the future, I guess, in the TARDIS, where we see destroyed London and stuff like that, is meant to kind of be showing what happens if they don't stop whatever Maestro is doing from happening, which I personally think is literally that she gets rid of the Beatles, and this is what happens if the Beatles don't exist, which is a little bit, maybe of an exaggeration, a bit hyperbolic, but that's what I seem to think is happening here. So it looks like Jinx Monsoon's Maestro is probably trapping maybe the Beatles in their instruments for pretty much the whole episode, which is why I'm not as bothered about the Beatles not looking that much like the Beatles at all, because they're probably going to be in it for like 5 minutes because they're going to be trapped in like their instruments or something like that for most of the episode. And that moment where they go back to the future, I guess, is kind of going to be like showing the butterfly effect of what happens if the Beatles don't exist from this point on, which is why I think there's that butterfly effect gag in the previous episode. Also, interestingly, we have had a cast list revealed for this episode, which I believe has a couple of people in it from Strictly Come Dancing or something, some presenters or judges from that, which I'm not sure how that's going to play into it. Maybe they're like watching Strictly at the start and that's what inspires Ruby to say that she wants to go and see the Beatles. Although for me personally, I think what's going to happen is we've obviously got Ruby going to say that she wants to see the dinosaurs in episode 1, and then the Doctor setting it to a random landing. I assume at the end of Space Babies, the Doctor's probably going to ask her where else she wants to go, like if there's anyone famous she wants to see, and stuff like that, and that's why they go and see the Beatles. And we also have a clip from one of the other trailers that seems to be the start of this episode where they're not in their 60s outfits, that seems to be just after maybe Ruby suggests to the Doctor to go and see the Beatles, and he's really happy with that idea. We also know there's the jukebox and the TARDIS, and we see them kind of dancing along in their outfits, but that's kind of interesting because we also know there's not going to be any Beatles songs in this episode, so I'm not kind of sure what they're going to be dancing along to at that point, because you'd think it would be Beatles music, but who knows. And speaking more again of the cast list, because that kind of just got away from me a little bit there, we know somebody is playing Cilla Black in this. I'm not entirely sure how she'll fit into this. I'm slightly familiar with who Cilla Black is, but I don't know her connection with like the Beatles or anything like that, so I'm not entirely sure how she's going to play into this. I assume she must have just been friends with the Beatles at some point when they were getting big. I'm not really sure, but I do roughly know who she is. And interestingly as well, the final note on this cast list is Murray Gold is listed on there as playing himself, which is interesting because obviously Murray Gold is the composer of Doctor Who. He returned with Russell T Davies, so it'll be interesting to see that he's maybe playing himself. I'm not sure if that's just meant to be like a little fun nod and fun cameo, or there's going to be some fourth wall breaking stuff in this. We do know like the Doctor has broken the fourth wall for this episode in the trailer. You see him winking at the camera in his outfit in this episode, so that would be interesting to see if there's going to be a lot of fourth wall breaking stuff in there. Maybe this is lending credence to the idea that I've seen a lot of people suggesting where maybe the Doctor and Ruby are in a television show in universe in the episode, or in this season, sorry, and that's why there's a lot of fourth wall breaking, and maybe that will get revealed in The Legend of Ruby Sunday or something like that. I'm honestly not too sure, but let me know what you think about that in the comments down below. Is this a fourth wall breaking type thing with Murray Gold playing himself? Is it just going to be a fun little reference? You know, there's just a guy that happens to be in Abbey Road Studios that's called Murray Gold and looks like Murray Gold, and he's just some composer. Okay, so next we get on to Boom, which is the return of Stephen Moffat. He's going to be writing this episode. We kind of know the general premise of this episode, and that's kind of it. We know the Doctor's going to be stuck on a landmine for like the whole episode, which before was just kind of speculation from what we got in the trailers, but I'm pretty sure now Russell and maybe Stephen Moffat himself have confirmed that that is the plot of the episode. That's what's going to be happening. So they're going to land on this terrifying battleground planet or battlefield on a planet, and the Doctor's probably going to immediately step onto a landmine, and Ruby's going to have to kind of do everything for him and kind of fight off these enemies or monsters or aliens to make sure the Doctor doesn't die from this landmine, basically. Besides that, we don't really know a whole lot about the episode, I don't think much else has been revealed. We do know, interestingly, I think it was mentioned in Doctor Who magazine, this episode was filmed on the Volume, which is the technology they have at kind of like mostly at Disney, I think, where they filmed a lot of like the Mandalorian and Star Wars shows on. It's basically just a big LED wall that they can use to have kind of the environments there in real time instead of adding it in green screen. Sometimes it can look really good, like when you have the guy that made it doing like Mandalorian stuff and the Batman. Sometimes it can look really terrible. I think they've got pretty sloppy with it recently with a lot of Star Wars shows and other shows that have used it, but it looks really good here because I did not realize from the trailers that they were using the Volume for this episode, so that's really interesting. And it makes sense as well because they're going to be confined to this very small area of this planet or battlefield, because obviously the Doctor's stuck there on a landmine for the whole episode. So I guess it really makes sense that they did it for this. I just couldn't tell that they used it because of how good it looks, and sometimes it can look really bad if you don't have, you know, the main guy that invented it helping you out to do it. So I don't know if he was there helping them or what, but it does look really good. Okay, so now we get on to episode 4, 73 Yards, which is definitely my most intriguing, the episode I'm most intrigued and excited for in this season, because it's very mysterious. We know very little about it, and obviously Russell has previously hinted that this is his favourite episode from the season, the best thing he's ever made, which, you know, he's going to say that to try and hype it up, but it looks like it is going to be very good and very interesting, and I'm most intrigued for this episode. From what we can tell, it seems like they're going to land on this Welsh countryside kind of cliff area that was filmed in Tenby, and it seems to me like the Doctor's going to basically vanish as soon as he kind of steps foot on there or something like that, because you don't see much of him in the trailer and promotional stuff in that outfit in this episode. And a lot of this was filmed, I think, before Shooty kind of could get involved properly with filming, because he was busy filming Barbie and Sex Education, stuff like that. So it seems like this is very much going to be a Dr. Light episode where Ruby is kind of the main focus. From what I can tell, it looks like she's going to be followed by this woman who isn't Susan Twist or Susan Triad. It's a different actor. She's kind of going to be followed by this person who's, I assume, going to be always 73 yards behind her, which is a very interesting idea and very creepy visual. It reminds me very much of It Follows, which is one of the creepiest horror films I've seen, because just that visual of just looking in the background and you can see someone walking towards the camera, whether they are the creature or not, it's terrifying. So it's definitely giving those vibes, which I really like. We also know that this episode is apparently going to be the episode with Albion, the political party, and Roger Ap Gwilliam, played by Anya and Barnard. I know I've got it wrong in the past before and said maybe that's to do with Dot and Bubble and maybe that's to do with the finale or something like that, but I'm pretty sure it's confirmed that that is to do with 73 Yards, which we finally had a bit of a look at in one of the Disney Plus trailers that I'm not even sure has been released officially yet. They've just kind of had it unlisted and paid promotion on the start of videos on YouTube, but there is a shot of Ruby in what looks like the Albion kind of offices, the like campaign offices that they have, with the title Politics on it, which is a very funny meme format now. So it seems like the Doctor's going to be gone for most of this episode, and Ruby's going to kind of be probably investigating maybe this Albion party or running against the Albion party to figure out what's happened to the Doctor or something like that. So that's very intriguing. And speaking of that, Jeremy Duncan has left a comment on one of my posts asking for your theories on the upcoming season, saying Ruby will actually run against Roger Ap Gwilliam as a party leader in 73 Yards. Also, I think the figure following Ruby is the Hag of the Mist from Welsh folklore. So that kind of adds on to what I was saying about what she's going to be doing with the Albion party. It's possible she's going to be running against them. I'm not sure how likely that is, because I don't know how much kind of Ruby's going to know about politics or anything like that, but maybe it's something she feels like she has to do to get the Doctor back or fight against whatever Roger Ap Gwilliam is doing. But I know a lot of people have also thought that maybe she's going to be working for Roger Ap Gwilliam, maybe just like kind of like as a spy or whatever, to kind of figure out what he's doing or something like that. So that could be possible. And yeah, the thing about the figure that is following Ruby being the Hag of the Mist from Welsh folklore, we do know this is going to be set in Wales. It's not just filmed in Wales, this episode. We know this episode is actually going to be set in Wales. And I'm pretty sure Roger Ap Gwilliam's character is a Welsh politician, or Anya and Barnard's character, Roger Ap Gwilliam, I should say. So yeah, I have seen a lot of these theories about this Welsh folklore, this Hag from the Mist. I think it has another name, I'm not sure, but I haven't looked too deep into it. But I have seen a lot of people speculating about that, and that seems very intriguing and very possible. So I'm definitely here for that theory. And the Jobby Dodger has also commented saying the actual name of the 73 Yards location translated into dying wood or something like that. Maybe the TARDIS will die, and the woman who is standing far away is the TARDIS in human form, so it will still survive. Yeah, we do know that the sign spotted for this pub that we seem to see Ruby in one of the trailers, it translates to the Deadwood, I think it was, which obviously could be an indication at the TARDIS. We do see the TARDIS kind of on its own, kind of getting a bit dilapidated after being left alone for a while, so that could be referring to the TARDIS, the Deadwood. And this is the interesting part of the theory, which I've not seen anyone else bring up besides Jobby Dodger, which is that the woman that is following Ruby could be a humanoid version of the TARDIS that's following her around so it can still survive, and maybe it could help Ruby or something like that when the Doctor isn't there. And I do think that that is a really interesting theory, that the TARDIS is kind of watching over Ruby and helping her out throughout the story in that form, which would be really interesting. And maybe Ruby doesn't know it straight away and she's very confused and scared of this person, and then she figures out that it's the TARDIS or something like that, which could be very interesting. So I thought that was a very good theory. Okay, so next we get on to Dot and Bubble. This is another one we've not really seen much from the trailers. We know it's got these slug-like creatures in it, and we know there's a lot of shots with this one actor that I can't remember her name. I'll make sure to put her name in if I remember, but I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she seems to be a big focus of this episode. And from what I remember, we also haven't seen a lot of the Doctor and Ruby in the promotion for this episode in the trailers. I think it's possible the Doctor could be wearing the outfit we've seen him in the reveal photo in this episode if he is in it, and we might know what outfit Ruby's wearing in this one. I can't remember. They seem very absent as well. I know obviously a lot of people have pointed out that 73 Yards seems very much like a Dr. Light story, but I'm thinking it's possible that this episode as well Dot and Bubble could also be Dr. Light and maybe Companion Light as well, very much like Blink, where we kind of follow the perspective of another character that isn't the Doctor and Ruby, kind of like with Sally Sparrow in Blink. And that could be this actor that I can't remember the name of. They could be our point of view character for this episode because they seem to be appearing a lot in the promotion for this. And with it being possibly a Dr. Light episode immediately after another Dr. Light episode, it is possible, I haven't seen anybody else say this, but in my head, it is possible that this could be almost like a two-parter from 73 Yards to Dot and Bubble. Obviously, it doesn't look too connected because this one seems to be very futuristic and probably set in the not so distant future, whereas 73 Yards looks like it's set in modern day. But it's possible that maybe we'll get to see the future of what happens after 73 Yards or something like that in Dot and Bubble. But that's just kind of my little theory that I've kind of had there, because it'd be very weird if we just had two Dr. Light episodes kind of back to back and them not be related. But that's entirely possible, and maybe this isn't a Dr. Light episode. That's just my theory on that. We also know it's probably going to be a very Black Mirror-like episode where it's probably going to be a lot about social media, and there's all these screens that we see. There's also that big dome we see over some sort of town or city, which I think is where most of the episode is going to take place. But besides that, I'm not entirely sure. So Jeremy Duncan once again said, Dot and Bubble will be about an Earth colony whose history is corrupted, or an alien society who only know limited things about humans, which try to physically manifest abstract and virtual aspects of social media. Hence the people clinging to actual posts, as in social media posts, seems silly, dystopian, and rustled to a T. So yeah, we did also see a shot in one of the trailers, that unlisted Disney Plus trailer, where what seems to be the main character of this episode is kind of walking into or very close to some big pole, kind of like a lamppost type thing, which seems like it's going to be fairly relevant to the episode. So this could be a very interesting take on it if it is kind of, they've heard about social media and social media posts, and maybe that's kind of what they think that is. It's a very interesting theory and very, very possible, I suppose. It definitely does seem like it's going to have something to do with social media. So I could see it being something like that. Okay, so next we get on to episode 6, which is titled Rogue. This is the only other episode not written by Russell T Davies, and it's written by Kate Herron and Bryony Redmond. So this is the Regency era episode where we've also got Jonathan Groff's character and Indira Varma's the Duchess. Now it seems like Indira Varma's character and maybe some other of her like friends or something like that are going to be some sort of alien species. They seem to be kind of these shape-shifting bird-like creatures, so they're probably going to be like the main villain of this episode. And it seems like Jonathan Groff's character is maybe kind of like a side character that's also maybe investigating this at the same time as the Doctor and Ruby. Now we know from one of the trailers, I think once again it was that unlisted Disney Plus trailer, that Jonathan Groff's character is apparently a bounty hunter. I know a lot of people have thought that it's maybe Captain Jack or a younger version of Captain Jack. I think this bounty hunter title does seem to kind of dispel those rumors. I personally didn't think it was Captain Jack anyway, but I did think it was slightly possible that it could have been a younger version of Captain Jack. Now this bounty hunter thing doesn't mean that's entirely out of the realm of possibility. I've thought it's maybe possible that Captain Jack, when he was younger, in that time that he had his memories wiped off, may have been a bounty hunter for the Time Agency or something like that. So it's still entirely possible that that's what this is, but I think it's more likely this is a new bounty hunter character, possibly still working for the Time Agency for all we know. But it seems like maybe this bounty hunter that Jonathan Groff is playing could be sent on a bounty hunting mission to find Indira Varma's the Duchess. That seems like the most likely solution or the most likely explanation to me. And Jeremy Duncan once again said, I think Groff will be playing a bounty hunter who works for the same boss the Meep did. Now this makes a lot of sense because obviously we had the reveal from the Meep that they work for the boss, and that's kind of all they said. So it's quite safe to assume the boss, whoever that is probably going to show up again at some point in this season. And maybe that is who Jonathan Groff's character is also working for. I think that's quite likely and quite possible. If not, it could be maybe Susan Triad or something like that. Or maybe that's something that's been saved for later on in season 2. But I do think this is very possible and a very good connection to be made. Okay, so finally we get on to the finale, The Legend of Ruby Sunday and the Empire of Death. We don't know too much about this. Like I said, there is the theory that Legend of Ruby Sunday could reveal that the Doctor and Ruby are in some TV show or something like that, which I think is entirely possible. But that does seem a little bit disconnected from the other things that I've seen about this episode and the other theories about this episode, because there's also the like kind of sandstorm that seems to be happening, which seems to be like the big threat of the episode, or the two parts I suppose. And we obviously know that Triad Technologies and Susan Triad is going to be involved somehow in this finale, and Unit is probably going to be kind of investigating them because Unit seems to be playing a big part in this finale. So Jeremy Duncan once again said, SUTEKH will be the villain of Empire of Death, and all of Mrs. Flood and Susan Triad's business carries over into season 2. So yeah, I think this is quite possible. A lot of people have been suggesting that SUTEKH could return for the finale of this episode, or for the finale of this season, sorry. Now, a lot of it to me does seem like quite a big stretch, and there's not too much evidence, in my opinion, to suggest that it is SUTEKH. But for me personally, I really do want it to be SUTEKH, because Pyramids of Mars, out of the few classic Who stories that I've seen, Pyramids of Mars is one of them, and it's a great story, and SUTEKH is a great villain. So I'd love it if it is SUTEKH. And the actor who does the voice of SUTEKH, Gabriel Wolf, he returned in Doctor Who Series 2 to voice the Beast, and he's still around, so it's entirely possible that he could return to voice SUTEKH if SUTEKH is showing up in this finale, which, like I said, I personally hope it is, and that would be great. Okay, so DWFan91, a great channel by the way, if you haven't seen his videos, check them out, says, I really like the SUTEKH theory and the Ruby Sunday erased theory personally. If they don't turn out to be true, they're good ideas and should be used in the future. So yeah, like I said, I really like the theory of SUTEKH being in this. If SUTEKH isn't used in this season, I'd love for them to use SUTEKH at some point in the future. I think it's such a great villain to bring back, especially with modern VFX and budget and stuff like that. It'd be great to see a modern version of SUTEKH. Also on that, I should have mentioned as well, one of the big reasons for me that I do think SUTEKH is quite likely, and one of the bits of evidence that I do think is possible, is the fact that we know somebody called the One Who Waits is going to be a big villain at some point in this era. And obviously the whole thing with SUTEKH is he was trapped in the pyramids, not able to move, just constantly sat down, and now he's trapped in, I can't remember what the actual thing is called, but he's trapped somewhere still, so he technically still could be the One Who Waits. So I think that's a good piece of evidence. Some of the other evidence that people have suggested is the fact that there's the sand, and obviously he's related to the whole like Egyptian kind of god type thing, which sand is obviously very heavily related to. And another piece of evidence that people have, which I think is maybe the biggest stretch but is still possible, is obviously we have Susan Triad and Triad Technologies. If you have Susan and Tech and you shorten all that down, you have SUTEKH. So, you know, that's another little breadcrumb possibly that it could be SUTEKH, but for me personally, that one is a bit of a stretch, but it's still possible. On the other note of this comment, I'm not entirely sure too much about the Ruby Sunday being erased theory. I feel like I maybe have heard a little mentions of it, but I'm not entirely sure what the whole theory on that is, but that could be an interesting idea. Although we have kind of had that happen already in the Church on Ruby Road, so I'm not too sure about that one. Okay, and we have a really big comment here from Adam Mars. This is the only one I've not actually gotten around to reading yet because of how long this comment is. I never got a chance to actually get around to reading it, so I'm going to read it for the first time in this video and see what theories they've got. So they say, I like to believe that SUTEKH will be the main villain of the two-part finale, and here's why. A few clues might point towards this from the trailers. For example, when the Doctor says, this is what we're trying to prevent, all life extinguished, this could potentially connect to SUTEKH as his ultimate goal is to destroy all life in the universe. Also, in extended media, the Fourth Doctor once took Sarah Jane to parallel Earth in 1980, where the planet has been left as a ruined and abandoned wasteland, orbiting a dead star, which SUTEKH was responsible for. Could that, like the Star Beast, be adapted onto television? If you remember during the first trailer, the Doctor was screaming at a very dead-looking planet and a smaller object outside the TARDIS, or should that be the memory TARDIS? So might that have been the alternate Earth and Moon which SUTEKH destroyed in this parallel universe? The One Who Waits must be someone with powers and abilities which rival the Toymaker, because he said himself during the giggle it was the only being he didn't dare face against. Could SUTEKH have escaped the time corridor? That's what it was that I was trying to remember. It was a time corridor that he's trapped in, and been hiding somewhere off the grid, waiting to get his revenge against the Doctor. Also, the mysterious sand we see people running away from and engulfing buildings in the city, could it be Martian sand? I also think that maybe some of the other supernatural villains we see in the next series could actually be working for SUTEKH as his puppets. Perhaps Ruby's parents are also pawns of SUTEKH, and the reason for her existence has some kind of sinister ulterior motive as a result. RTD saying that the one episode people should absolutely stay up for when it comes out at midnight, no matter what, is The Legend of Ruby Sunday, because it will have fans screaming. My feelings are that one of the huge things about The Legend of Ruby Sunday could be a massive cliffhanger ending where SUTEKH is revealed. This is all just my theory, of course, but what do you think? Yeah, this gives a lot of good credence and evidence as to why SUTEKH could be the main villain. I think this really sets it out very well. This is probably the most strong evidence for SUTEKH that I've seen. The sand being Martian sand is a very good link to make. And like I said about the One Who Waits, I do think it's very likely that that could be SUTEKH because he's very powerful and obviously he's been waiting around for a long time. And yeah, the fact that Russell said to try and watch The Legend of Ruby Sunday as soon as it's released, if you can, is a good point, because if it's revealed at the end of that SUTEKH is the villain, that is a big reveal that people probably wouldn't want it spoiled for them. So that's a good point. Also, another thing that this reminded me of is the fact that we see the memory TARDIS in one of those trailers, that unlisted trailer again. So it seems like for some reason the memory TARDIS from Tales from the TARDIS is going to be appearing in this finale for some reason. The Doctor is going to be in it, apparently with Mel for some reason. And I genuinely don't know why that could be showing up, but that is something I definitely need to mention, because if that is going to be the case, that is very important. So if you have any theories as to why he is in the memory TARDIS, let me know in the comments down below. Okay, so the final theory is from S.E. Latidos, or Latidos, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. I will like a Marvel-type post-credit scene in Doctor Who Series 14, where it's revealed 1. Belinda, Barada Sethu's character, 2. is teased the new special for 2025, and 3. Mrs. Flood isn't revealed who she actually is, but is teased. So I do think it is possible, obviously with this appearing on Disney Plus and having a very MCU influence now that Russell kind of likes apparently, that we could get a post-credit scene at the end of this season. We kind of had it at the Church on Ruby Road with the Mrs. Flood never seen a TARDIS before moment. That was a little bit of a post-credit scene, so I do think it's entirely possible with this going on Disney Plus that we might get a post-credit scene at the end of the final episode. And yeah, it's entirely possible it could be Barada Sethu's character, who is potentially called Belinda. That would be a very interesting one to have for the post-credit scene. I do think we'll get a teaser for the special that's coming out at the end of the year, but that's probably going to be like a next time trailer that we get at the end. But I do think that is very likely. And yeah, Mrs. Flood not being revealed in this season is entirely possible. She does seem to be showing up, I think, in season 2 as well. So it's possible we won't actually find out who Mrs. Flood is this season. Maybe we'll get some more hints as to who she is, but we probably won't actually find out who she is. Or if we do, for some reason, she'll be sticking around for the next season. So yeah, if it doesn't get revealed, it's possible that we'll have some more hints revealing who she could be at the post-credit scene of this season. I do think that's very possible. Okay, so I think that's all I have to say about my final predictions for Doctor Who Season 1. Let me know if I forgot anything in the comments down below, and let me know some more of your theories if I didn't talk about any that you have personally. Subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss my reviews that will be coming up when this season starts. I'll be reviewing every single episode of Doctor Who Season 1 when they come out, as quickly as I can get them made. And if you want to know everything we know about Doctor Who Season 1 so far, you can watch this video here.